So I think we're ready to begin. We have an extremely full agenda. So I wanted to ask a couple of favors of folks while I welcome you to the very first South End Forum virtual meeting. I'm delighted to have all of you here. It will afford us an opportunity perhaps to reach out to a much larger group of South Enders and other abutting neighborhood folks. So we think that's great. For anybody who has done any one of these virtual meetings, it will come as no surprise that we need to ask folks to mute themselves when they're not speaking. That's just a courtesy, otherwise it can get really, really feedbacky and difficult for people to hear. So Matt Muse from the Blackstone Franklin Neighborhood Association and his colleagues are helping us tonight to manage this through their platform, their Zoom platform. So Matt's working in the background trying to make sure that some of the technical details are all working well so that we can move through the agenda. As I say, I'm really delighted that we have this opportunity to meet. When it comes to questions, we have some questions that have been submitted by email in advance on specific topics. I will go to those first, and then we would ask if you have a specific question on a presentation or on an issue that you want to talk a little bit about, please use the chat function. I have access to that chat, and I will be monitoring it and calling on people based on that function, just to make things a little bit easier rather than people raising their hand all at the same time. So let's use the chat function for questions if you can. And let's begin with the agenda. Any new organizational announcements that people want to make other than what's on the rest of the agenda? I think people would have notified me in advance, so I think we're good. So we're just going to go into announcements. And Joan from the St. Botolph Neighborhood Association has the floor for the first announcement. Joan, take it away. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks, everyone. I'll keep it really brief. One of the biggest things that's going to be happening in the St. Botolph neighborhood in the coming years is that the national development is going to be redeveloping the Midtown Hotel. They're going and commercial building. And on Tuesday, October 13th, there is a Zoom presentation from National Development that will show their plans, and they're going to be taking community input. So, so if anyone is interested in attending and coming to our Zoom meeting, please go to our website, stbotolph.org, and you can find the link there. We welcome all to listen to the presentation to see what's coming. And that's all I'll really say for them. Thanks.
I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. The next announcement is from Acharya from United South End Settlements.
Hi, yep, thank you so much, Steve. Great to see everyone. So I just wanted to make sure folks know that United South End Settlements is running a weekly delivery food program or pickup. If you're in the neighborhood, you can pick up. We are offering 25-pound bags of fresh produce to our neighbors and our families that need a little extra support at this time. So if you or anybody you know needs fresh produce, we are offering that at 48 Rutland Street on Thursdays. You can send me an email. I can put it in the chat if it's easiest probably to send my email. But we hope to we have about 50 more bags that we can give out to the community. So we want to make sure we're reaching far and wide.
Terrific. Thank you, Acharya. The last is on that I have listed for announcements is from Yvette who's the new welcome Yvette to your new role as the new president of the South End, the Friends of the South End Library. We're delighted to welcome you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks everybody. I have just a few announcements, but the first is that Friends of the South End Library would like to just take this opportunity to thank Marlene Nienhaus for her amazing and long-standing service to the Friends of the South End Library. And she has recently retired from that position, and I'm grateful to be, as Steve said, the new president of Fossil. So just a couple of announcements. Tomorrow night, we're hosting South Ender Dorothy Keeney, who wrote the untold story of Annie McKay and the Boston Public School nurses. So a history of school nursing and the first school nurse in Boston. And you can find information on how to get on by going to the Friends of the South End Library website if you choose to join tomorrow night at 7. And then in November, we have the acclaimed Sue Miller, who is going to be talking about her new book called Monogamy. And again, that'll be November 10th on Tuesday at 7. And finally, we have a new local focus window in the library, that the windows that face Tremont Street. And this is South Ender Gisela Griffith, a wonderful artist whose work is really beautiful and provocative. So if you have a chance and you're walking by, take a look and see the poster and the loop of her slides of her work, as well as examples of her work in the window. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate the moment or two to give those announcements.
Not at all. Thank you, Yvette, and welcome to your new role. The last announcement is from the Blackstone Franklin Neighborhood Association. And for those of you who are still watching your geraniums bloom, the Blackstone Franklin Neighborhood Association is announcing their annual tree and wreath sale, because right around the corner is, of course, the holidays. Saturday, December the 5th, online ordering will be available in early November. And so all of the information will be published on our Facebook page, as well as on the Blackstone Franklin Neighborhood Association website. So get ready for the holidays, folks. So the first item on the agenda is we're delighted to welcome Vanessa to the South End Forum. Vanessa is the CEO of IBA, which also has responsibility for the Villa Victoria Center for the Arts and a lot of wonderful nonprofit work in the South End and elsewhere. So we wanted to have an opportunity to listen to some of the new development that's going on with the 85 West Newton building, which, as most of you are aware, is an old, I forget what the actual name of it was, but it was the old church that is there that had significant structural difficulties. But I won't introduce beyond that, except to say we're delighted to welcome Vanessa Calderon-Rosado to the forum. The floor is yours, Vanessa.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And good evening, everyone. As Steve mentioned, my name is Vanessa Calderon-Rosado. I am the Chief Executive Officer of IBA, Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción. And just as a way of introduction, briefly for those of you who are not familiar with IBA or IBA, since 1968, IBA has been an integral and important part of the South End community. We were founded by a group of Puerto Rican activists that gave themselves the task of revitalizing the neighborhood, of creating affordable housing, and creating programs, services for supporting low-income families in the neighborhood. So we have been driving this mission. So maybe everyone should try to mute themselves. But we have been driving this mission from the beginning by developing not only affordable housing in the South End, but also other parts of the city, by increasing social, economic, and learning opportunities for children, youth, and families, and by creating spaces for creativity and for the promotion of Latino arts and artists. So in addition to IBA's 667 housing portfolio, units of housing, of affordable housing. We have a bilingual preschool program, after school and summer programs for teens, college preparation programs, financial coaching programs, and all of our arts programmings that span from, you know, the well-known Festival de Danzas in the summer, this past summer was virtual, to a number of events in what used to be called the Villa Victoria Center for the Arts, with an arts gallery and performance space. As most of you know, the 85 West Newton Street building used to house all of those spaces. And we also use that space. Many of you may have been there, not only for art events, but also for community gatherings, for community meetings. And it has for this long served as an important space for our mission and also for the neighborhood. In keeping with being stewards of our property, be good stewards of our properties, in 2017, EVA embarked into a two-phase renovation of the building. The first phase included exterior renovations and the repointing of the structure. The second phase was destined to renovate the interior spaces to upgrade them with state-of-the-art technology that will ensure a unique and enhanced experience to the community, to our audiences, and to our patrons. However, during that first phase, structural deficiencies were uncovered on the tower of the building, and those deficiencies required us to demolish the steeple and the spire of the tower and rebuilding it. So with the goal that we were going to restore it and put it back. Eventually, however, we found that the tower also had significant major structural deficiencies that made it unsafe, and those deficiencies went all the way to the ground. And not only that, those deficiencies extended to the north wall of the building, to the roof, and the trusses that were supporting that roof. So as a result, the building was shut down by ISD, but at the time, it continued operation on what is called the parish house, and the part of the preschool program that was underneath the parish house as a preschool program was also housed at the building. But in September of 2019, last year, the fire department made a visit to an inspection to the building, and at that moment, they deemed that the entire structure was unsafe. And ISD, as a result, required the entire shutdown and the immediate evacuation of the whole building on that day. So we have been working then with ISD on what the future of the building would be. In June of this year, ISD issued, after working with them and they assessing the conditions of the building, in June of this year, ISD issued a certified, that the building must be demolished, that the entire structure that needed to be removed and come down. And as a result, then last August, Landmarks extended a certificate of exemption to allow us to remove the building. So tonight we're here, and I will introduce a member of our team, Peter Monkenbeck, who will tell you what that process means. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit what will happen after demolition. I think you should know from our work in the community, and particularly in this building for the last several years, that we are extremely committed to what that function would look like and what that function needs to continue to be, not only for EVA, but for the entire neighborhood. So I'm going to stop here for a second and then introduce Peter Monkenbeck, who is our project manager owner's representative in this project, who will tell you a little bit about what the demolition project will be and look like, what to expect, and then I can talk a little bit about next steps.
Good evening.
Peter, hold on one second. Just a technical note to folks. We were having this is a very well attended meeting, and unfortunately, this particular Zoom meeting was capped at 100, and we quickly reached that, but we've just paid Zoom some more money. So it's now open up. So anybody that's been waiting, or if the message that people were getting that the meeting is full, that should start to change now, just so everyone's aware. So if you have others that are pinging you or emailing you or texting you that they can't get into the message, can't get into the meeting, please tell them to try again, because the meeting should have opened up now. Okay, so if folks are complaining. Peter, we'll go back to you. I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to be sure.
Thank you, Stephen. So my name's Peter Munkenbeck. I've been working with IBA on various things for more than 20 years. And when it was discovered that the building had much more serious problems than were originally anticipated, IBA called on me to become involved in sorting out what needed to be done. The first thing that we did, starting in April, when it was first discovered that there were serious deficiencies in the tower, was to try and assess what is the extent of those deficiencies and what will be the cost of getting back on track. And the answer was that the original $11 million exterior envelope contract would turn into a $24 million contract. And that was so dramatic that the IBA board made the determination shortly thereafter in July that that was not a feasible option, continuing with the existing property. So as Vanessa has outlined, there was back and forth between IBA and the South End Landmark District Commission, as well as with ISD, through several iterations. And that was a year-long process, which finally resulted in the decision by ISD that the building needed to come down, and the decision by Landmark that that decision by ISD, in fact, removed the Landmark jurisdiction. And so that is what has, that's the regulatory status as of July that has allowed us to proceed with the planned removal, demolition of the building on the site. The demolition process has begun, in the sense that the first thing you have to do is cap the utilities and cut off and cap the utilities in the street, lay out the the sidewalk arrangements, and a portion of the park needs to be cordoned off, and then so that process has begun, and we expect that the visible impact, the dramatic moments, if you will, of this demolition will occur in November. We don't have the exact date yet because the cut and cap process isn't over, and that obviously has to, and as you may know, dealing with utility companies is a challenge. So we're working through that. Very good cooperation from Parks, from ISD, and from everyone that needs to cooperate. We're proceeding with that plan, and we expect that by by January, so about 2 months after the demolition begins in earnest, that it will be completed. The things that the neighbors will notice, besides the drama of the actual removal of the taller parts of the building, is that people will be directed to cross the street if they're coming from Tremont. As soon as they get to the pedicab area, they'll cross across to the far side, and they will be given the opportunity to rejoin the northeast side, if you will, when they're about midway along the park. They can cross back and continue and enter the park, or continue along from there. The buffer zone in the park will be about 20 or 30 feet deep. So it will not we'll not actively use the park, but we will cordon it off. But still the most active portions of the park, including the playground, will still be accessible throughout this period. At our request, and we believe it's in response to or in anticipation of neighborhood concerns, is we asked for and received permission to have the portion the time when the street is shut down will be approximately a week-long period. It will be limited to weekdays, we hope, if all goes well, but they have to set up a substantial crane in the middle of the street. So it's a continuous shutdown for approximately 5 days. The precautions that we're going to take with regard to dust control will include what's known as a misting machine, which is a lot of fine spray coming from nozzles that are going to be on a portable or a lift that'll be directed right at the portions of the building that are being disturbed. And I think the last thing I wanted to say was that on completion, the site will be entirely surrounded by a 6-foot high fence that will have, a kind of a privacy screen attached to the fence, so that the experience from the park and from the street will be a fabric solution until such time as the new building resumes. And I think I'm turning it back to Vanessa now, who will explain the plan with regard to how we're going to figure out what to do.
Vanessa, can I interrupt just to ask a question that's come up in the chat before too many questions sort of pile up? Charlie asks, can you clarify, did ISD say that it must be demolished or that it may be demolished? And so the question goes on, if 24 million can be raised, can the building be restored?
And the answer to the first question is that ISD began by saying that we had the choice to either demolish it or follow the engineer's direction and make it safe and restore it. And at that time, and that was about, I'm going to say that happened in November or so of 2019. And that our response to that was that we could not afford it because yes, if we were able to raise 24 million of extra money, okay, I mean, of which, sorry, 13 million would be extra money beyond what we already had to raise. If we could essentially more than double what we could raise, then theoretically the building could have been restored. But it is clear from 30 years of history of trying really hard to raise money to restore this building that getting hundreds of thousands is a really, really difficult job. And to get 8 figures, more than 10 million extra, we understood to be impossible. And so theoretically, yes, but as a practical matter, no. But to follow on the question about the demolition choice, we acknowledge we had a choice, a theoretical choice that we couldn't as a practical matter exercise. And that was a stalemate that lasted for 7 months. At the end of the stalemate, meaning that ISD was during that period saying, if you don't fix it, tear it down. And we said, we can't fix it, but we all stood and stared at each other for that period because we couldn't raise the money or anything like that kind of money. And ISD was reluctant to say, then tear it down, until July, when they understood that we really couldn't. And in July, they did not give us a choice. In July, they issued a document that said, given the fact that you're unable to restore it, you must tear it down. That was what got South End Landmarks District Commission over the hump and able to say, okay, we get it now. We don't have jurisdiction and we will let it happen.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have other questions
Please.
before we get into the future?
Nope, that's it. That's it on this issue, correct.
Okay.
So
Please, Vanessa.
Back to Vanessa.
Good. So yeah, I just want to conclude and then open up for other questions because I know you have a full agenda. So basically, as you have seen, we really have approached the renovation of this building with utmost respect. This has been a very difficult process for our community, for our staff, for our board, and certainly for the entire neighborhood. So as we begin conceptualizing the new building, we envision a building that will have elements of the old building with more contemporary ones. And we envision a building that will be able to create a more active relationship between the space and the street and the space and the playground. We believe that we can have a building that will better activate those connections between the street and the playground, that will have more of a sense of openness and transparency so people can see what's happening in the building and vice versa. So we're very excited about this possibility of activating the whole landscape and the whole area on West Newton Street with the new building. So what's next about it? We are now going to start preparing, selecting a design team to help us envision that and to help us create that. And once we start getting into that design process, we hope to come back to you, to the community. And by then, I hope that we can do it in person so you can see, actual renditions of what we're thinking, to hear your ideas and your input on what our architects are thinking based on what we want to do in the space, which will house, again, our arts programs and EBA's offices. So we are, despite the challenges that we have faced and difficulties and the emotional roller coaster that we have gone through with the outcome of this building, we're now at a stage in which we'll feel hopeful and we'll feel excited about its future and look forward to talking about that future with you when the time comes. But I'm going to stop there, see if there are other questions, and if not, then I'll turn it back to you, Steve.
I'm not seeing more questions in the chat. So let's, because we've got a very full agenda, we're just going to move on. But I want to thank both Peter and you, Vanessa, for the update. Can you one more time, just so people are aware, what's the expected date for demo to begin again?
It will be in the month of November when the serious demo and the street taking will occur. We don't have a week yet because, as I said, we have some uncertainties before we can schedule it.
Okay.
But as soon as we have more a firm date, obviously we will make sure that we'll let Neighborhood Association and you, Steve, know, and we will post that on the South End Forum Facebook page so people know. We'll also be sending additional letters to the abutters to ensure that everyone knows once we have a firm date.
One last question before we let you jump. There is a question, do you have an architect? Is that's you, must be you, Peter, correct?
I'm not an architect. We're engaged in the process, which we hope will proceed smartly to answer that question. We don't have anything to present on that answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the last question that just came up was, what building are we discussing? It's 85 West Newton for those who have come to the meeting late. All right.
Correct.
So I think that does it. And I want to thank Peter and Vanessa for, and we look forward to the next update at the next forum meeting. So thanks again very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Everyone.
Before we move to the next agenda item, I just want to provide an opportunity now for any of our elected officials to indicate that they're on the call. Anybody that wants to do a shout out. I know that I think I saw Ed Flynn. Any other elected officials that want to do a shout out and acknowledge that they're here? Sherry from Representative, please. Sherry, are you there?
No, I mean, well, Steve, I'm here.
Oh, Eric.
Sherry,
it's Eric. Okay.
I think Sherry is on here. I think I saw her earlier. I just wanted to say a quick hello and introduce Sherry. Sherry, who just started in my office. Actually, today was her first day. So she's on the call tonight, and we have to go to another neighborhood meeting after this. But she'll be, there available to answer any questions or conversations that are necessary from the state's level. I also, I think we talked about potentially trying to do a legislative update next month. I know Representative Santiago is on this as well. I know he's traveling overseas for the National Guard, but I think next month we wanted to try to do something to try to update people from what's going on at the State House. But thank you for giving me a chance to say hello. And Sherry is available to answer any questions in the future. So thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Terrific, Aaron, and we look forward to bringing you back for the legislative agenda next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Want to acknowledge that
Councilor Flaherty's on.
Councilor, please.
And Alicia,
Councilor.
from my office is on as well. So thank you for having me.
Terrific. And Councilor Sabi George, I hear, are you on as well?
Here I am. I'm here, Steve. You've got so many pages. I don't even know where I land on your screen. But just hi, everyone. Anitra Sabi George. I'll be here for most of the evening. I might log off for a few minutes to sneak into another community meeting, but I will be back. Happy to see all of you virtually. Certainly wish it was in person, but happy you were able to make this forum happen this evening. And I'll leave. I'd be happy to share my contact information, but the chat is not open for general consumption, which is probably a better thing. Thank you, Stephen.
Right. Thanks, Lisa. And Ed, Councilor Flynn?
Hey, Steve, and hi to all the South End residents. Glad to be here with you. And I know we're in a very difficult time in our neighborhood and our city. But what I can say to you is I'll continue working hard on your behalf, especially on quality of life issues, 7 days a week, trying my best to be responsive to you. So I just want to say thank you to the South End residents. Vanessa and Sophia from my team are also on this call. So thank you, Steve, and to all the South End neighbors.
Great. John Santiago, are you
Yep, Steve, I'm here.
calling us from the sandbox? Oh, great. Okay.
Hey, I just want to say a quick hello to everyone. It's good to see so many of you. As Representative Michaelwitz said, I'm away on a faraway mission just for a little bit. I'll be back soon. But regardless, since everything's being done remotely anyway, I've been on the phone calls with so many of you texting back and forth. So feel free, don't hesitate to reach out. I had a couple of phone calls today with constituents and a couple of community meetings, and I don't anticipate that changing at all since I'll be away. So feel free to get in touch with me, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, John. Danny from Councilor Janey's office, are you on as well?
Hey everyone, thank you, Stephen. My name's Danny. I am here from Council President Kim Janey's office. Thank you all. I'm glad to be here.
Great, thanks. And any other electeds that I've missed, please?
I'm here, Steve. Frank Baker.
Oh, Frank, thank you. I'm sorry I forgot you because you had trouble getting in because we had capped the number. I apologize. Forgive me.
Yeah, I thought you were going to give me the night off. There were already 100 people here, but then you fixed it, so I'm here. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for everything.
Okay. Great. And last, Patty Keenan from Ellis. Are you still with us?
I'm still here. Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Patty Keenan. Yep, I'm new on staff at Ellis. I think many of you knew Nikki Stewart, and she's now at the North End, the North Church Foundation. So my job is very similar to hers, a little bit different. I'm called the Vice President for Advancement, Community, and Equity. So it's just a little bit broader. I'm happy to be here. I've been at Ellis for 3 months, and you probably have all seen the kids. We were excited to reopen on July 1st. Everybody's doing well. And I want to send greetings from Lauren Cook, who you may know, our CEO, who's home on maternity leave with her second daughter, Charlotte, called Charlie. And you'll be seeing her out and about in the neighborhood soon. And last, I want to announce that we have our first virtual event on November 12th. It's open to the public. Tickets start at $25. Current Ellis families are free. It's called Let's Talk About Race, Children in Boston, an evening of conversation with Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. And I'm pleased to see that some of my host community members are here, but I'm running out of time. So thanks, everybody. Please see us at www.ellismemorial.org for more information. Thanks.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. We're going to move right over to Manny, you've been very patient. We're only a couple of minutes behind schedule, but I'm delighted to welcome Manny Lopez, who is the CEO for the now combined South End Community Health Center and the East Boston Community Health Center. I don't know what the new terminology is, but I think you'll probably let us know. And Manny also has the honor of being the chair of the Boston Public Health Commission, which is the governing body for the Boston Public Health, for the commission. So we're delighted to welcome Manny. You have a presentation for us tonight. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, everyone. It's great to be here this evening. Let me see if I can just pull up my slide deck. Actually, before I do that, just again, thank you for allowing us to present on the merger of East Boston Neighborhood Health Center and the South End Community Health Center. I see a lot of friends here, Vanessa, Anissa, Aaron, Ed, Michael, John, but many of you I don't know, and I'm looking forward to get to know you. I've been in East Boston my entire life. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in East Boston. I'm a product of the Boston Public School System. Graduated from East Boston High School, where Anissa had worked prior to being an elected official. Yeah, and it's great now to be part of the South End community, and I look forward to, again, meeting with each one of you and learning more about this community and learn about how we can continue the services that the South End Community Health Center has been providing for over 50 years. So let me take you quickly through a presentation that will describe the merger. Hopefully everyone could see that my screen. Just gonna move. Okay, so this next slide is quite a busy slide, but it's our way to talk about East Boston Neighborhood Health Center on one slide. So as you can see, we are a large community health center. We're actually the largest community health center in the country, and this is prior to merging with South End Community Health Center. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Some of these stats have been updated, so they do include South End, and I'll highlight that as I go through the blocks here. So just quickly, we're one of the only community health centers in the country in East Boston that runs a 24/7 emergency department. We're actually the 4th busiest emergency department in the city. So that's sometimes a surprise for many folks. We're coming close to now 1,400 employees. That it does include the South End. Prior to the South End, we had about 1,200 employees. We have our own workforce development program, so we believe in growing our own, hiring in as many people as we can from the community, because they bring to us not only the opportunity to provide care in the language people prefer, but they also give us an opportunity to provide an economic impact to the community. We're proud to say that the Boston Globe has honored us top places to work now 6 years. So that's a secret. So next month, when they announce top places to work, we will be included in that ranking. And for the first time, Forbes magazine has just named us best employer in the state. So we're excited about that. More recognition, HRSA, which is the state federal program that oversees federally qualified health centers, what we call FQHCs, and there are about 20 in Massachusetts. They issued these awards for quality, HIT, or health information technology usage. So we've received a number of those, as well as the South End. We do have a significant investment in technology. So we were one of the first medical facilities back in 1998 to implement an electronic health record, which I'm sure many of you heard all about. This particular product is called Epic, or Epic Care. It's the same system run by many of the large institutions like Mass General, Brigham, Partners Healthcare, BMC. We were one of the first to implement it back in 1998. So before Partners, before BMC, and before others. So we have a significant investment in technology. It really has helped us better manage the care of our patients. On the bottom there, Boston's first elementary school-based health center. This recognition goes to the Haas Center, which is part of the South End Community Health Center. And then more about our programs. We have a program servicing patients affected with HIV, and we have a 97% suppressed viral load, which is very, very impressive. We've received national recognition from the programs there. We have a program called PACE program, and this is a program that we're hoping in the future we could bring to the South End. This is a program designed for the elderly to try to keep elderly out of institutions, out of nursing homes, out of hospitals, living independently in the community for as long as possible. So we actually function as an insurance company in offering this program, as well as a provider of care. And then you can see other areas there. Another recognition that actually came from the South End is a leader in LGBTQ healthcare equality through the Human Rights Commission. So we're proud about that. Okay, so our mission statement, which is very similar. So the good news here, when we merged, we didn't have to change our mission statement because our mission statement was very reflective of South End's mission statement. And really, we'd like to summarize that everyone's welcome to the health center, regardless of your ability to pay. And without regard to race, ethnicity, age, income, insurance status, language, culture, or social circumstances. These are some of the campaigns that we've run over the years. In 2016, we launched All Are Welcome to encourage people to come in and get care, regardless of where they're from or their ability to pay. Of course, Black Lives Matter more recently, given the social and racial injustice that we're seeing across the country. Here's our core values, and over to the right here is what our staff said is important to them and how they treat each other, as well as how they treat our patients. And this has all been part of our strategic plan called 2020 Vision. This is a map of our locations. So as you can see, for a number of years, for 50 years actually, this year is our 50th anniversary. We've been located specifically within East Boston, about 20 some odd buildings in East Boston. But we also run a small operation, 2 operations in Winthrop. One's a PACE program, which is a program of all-inclusive care for the elderly program, as I described. We also have a site in Revere as well. And now, of course, we're located 2 locations in the South End, 1601 Washington Street and the Haas Center. So why merge? South End Community Health Center initiated this merger when they felt it was difficult for them to continue to operate as a small community health center. They essentially went out and tried to find a larger partner. And some of the same reasons why other major healthcare institutions, some much larger, are merging. It's to improve patient care and increase access, reduce administrative overhead, and stabilize the finances of the institutions, and of course, increase efficiency and sustainability. So why did they select East Boston Neighborhood Health Center? We already talked about the mission, very much aligned. East Boston's size and our ability to scale, particularly around electronic health record or our finance system or our HR systems. We've adopted over the years all tier 1 systems that you normally would see in Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies. So it gives us the ability to scale very easily. As we mentioned, we do have an innovative culture. A few years ago, we started a company along with a few other health centers, but we were the founding member of an accountable care organization called Community Care Cooperative, or C3. This is our ability to create value, meaning that we improve the lives of the patients that are part of this health plan, but also reduce the overall cost of healthcare. So that's a partnership with the state. We talked about PACE, the program of all-inclusive care for the elderly, and integrating primary care and behavioral health care. And then, of course, being able to purchase goods and services at a much lower cost. We're part of a national group that's made up of 16 other large health centers from Puerto Rico to Hawaii, California. We're the largest healthcare purchasing group in the country, and this allows us to purchase everything from medical supplies to office supplies at a heavily discounted rate. So that's what attracted South End Community Health Center to us. So together, as I said, over 1,300 employees, an operating budget of over 70 million. Actually, this is approaching more, close to 200 million in our next budget, servicing over 100,000 patients and visits, over 400,000 patient visits. So our promise to the community health center and the community is that we will not eliminate or remove any programs as a result of this merger. No plans for reduction in force or layoffs. So we completed the merger on July 1st and no one lost their jobs. So that's a huge plus. We were proud about that. No reduction in salary as a result of the merger. South End Community Health Center will retain its name and its brand. And the South End will continue to have representation on a community board. What makes community health centers or federally qualified health centers unique is that we're governed by a community board. These are patients of the health center who are my boss. We want to make sure that there are representation. So there are 2 seats on that board representing the South End. Not going to walk you through this complicated timeline, but it's been a long journey. This is probably one of the longest mergers in healthcare history. It was approximately a year and a half, quite significant regulatory hurdles. And I have to thank Mayor Walsh and his team for helping us get through many of these hurdles. But the official merger was completed on July 1. But we're not done there. This what we're doing tonight and what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks is meeting as many folks as I can. You may see me in front of 1601 Washington Street, opening doors for our staff and saying hello to folks walking by. That's who we are. We want to be part of the community and want to engage in the community in this next phase. We'll also continue to work on integrating the cultures and making sure the team at the South End feel like part of this, what we call one company at East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. And we're already reviewing some employee feedback and surveys to help for areas of improvement. And then finally, this is our picture. This is who we are. If you were on 1601 Washington Street yesterday, you saw me passing out ice cream bars to the staff there. Again, just an opportunity to make sure we say thank you. We appreciate all the work that they do. And again, to make them feel like we're all part of family. I'll pause there for any questions, but thank you again for giving me the opportunity to present.
Manny, thank you very, very much for the presentation. We're now open to questions, but there is one that was raised and one that I also had, which was that one of the issues that was discussed over a couple of years ago through the South End Working Group on Addiction, Recovery, and Homelessness was the introduction of a new Suboxone treatment program at the South End Community Health Center. Since that program was first introduced as part of the psychiatric services, I think we've lost the psychiatrist who was managing that, and I just wanted to know whether or not the substance abuse treatment programs that have been traditionally offered through the South End Community Health Center will continue to be offered.
Yes, it will. It will continue to be offered. In fact, we've transferred one of our long-standing physicians who is Spanish-speaking, bilingual, bicultural, Spanish-speaking, to the South End. So he will oversee the program, and we will make sure it's connected to primary care. One of the things we feel really strongly about is that treatment programs like Suboxone program or any program that we run in behavioral health is tied into primary care. So we will be looking to integrate and make primary care a close partner to any program or services that we run there.
Well, one of the things that the South End would be very interested in doing is monitoring the patient caseload in terms of behavioral health affecting the neighborhood at large. So it's something that has always been traditionally something of interest to us. So we'll be turning to you on a regular basis, given some of the clear opioid addiction and homelessness issues that we in the South End community face. Not that we're exclusive in the entire city, but we certainly have our hands full with the challenge around us. So we want to make sure that those kinds of programs get retained and that we continue to get updated on how well we're treating people and whether or not we're being able to expand the availability of those treatment programs.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact,
I think
I'll at least leave it open for you to invite us back in and bring in our chief medical officer and our new director of substance use treatment, Raphael, at any time, even in your next meeting, to have more discussion about that. Again, we run a large program in East Boston, and we expect to continue the program in the South End and expand it if necessary.
Perfect. Thank you, Manny. We're going to move on. I just wanted to I wanted to acknowledge we've got a couple of new elected officials who have joined us. Michelle Wu, I think you're with us now. I'm told. Is that true?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Councilor. Hey, Councilor. Anyone else joined us that I should acknowledge? Great. So Manny, thank you again. Oh, Sam, forgive me.
Sorry, I've been coming from another meeting. Samuel Hurtado, Chief of Staff, President Kim Janey. So.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Manny, once again, we thank you for the presentation and thanks for a seamless consolidation. Appreciate it. So we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the creating a new partnership opportunity. I'm going to be joined by two colleagues, Eve Ward and Elizabeth Butel, but I'll turn it over to Eve Ward. For those of you that are not aware, Eve is the president of the South End Business Alliance, and she and I, and together with neighbors and neighborhood associations and folks across the spectrum, have been noodling our heads for a while in terms of how we can create a better partnership between the business functions of the South End and the residential neighborhood associations. And we think we've come to a pretty good model that we're asking all the neighborhood associations and SEBA to adopt. So I'll turn it over to Eve and let her explain a little bit about what we've been up to. Eve?
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. Yeah, Steve and I have built a very good relationship over the last couple of years. And certainly I've got good news because now we have a new president, but I'll move on to that in just a second. But I will stay on the South End Business Alliance and work very closely with Steve and also the neighborhood associations, and really form a collaboration when dealing with a new development coming into the South End. So, for example, related bill near Benjamin Franklin, on Benjamin Franklin site. And so we build more of a coalition with neighborhood, with the business association, and anyone interested in that project. So therefore, they're just going to one group and not to many groups. And then we would do an outreach across the South End. But also neighborhood associations working with businesses is absolutely paramount now, given the situation we're in. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the elected officials on this call. I still get stopped in the street about the webinars that we did through early COVID and getting the message out about PPP. So it was really a collective sort of approach and worked really well. But now Steve's focus and my focus is going to be on making sure that there's enough neighborhood outreach and also working with businesses and neighbors sort of hand in hand, so we keep our beautiful neighborhood and we keep our businesses going. But I think I'd like to hand over now to Elizabeth, who I believe is here, and let Elizabeth take it from there. Steve?
I'm going to, Elizabeth, if you could just hold on one quick second, just so people are aware of the model that we've created. I just wanted to be sure that folks were aware. There are 15 independent neighborhood associations in the South End, and they typically are residential neighborhood associations. This model that we're presenting is that we're asking every neighborhood association in the South End to have a business representative as part of their neighborhood organizational structure. And that will allow both business and residential issues to sort of move into the overall discussion and dialogue that occurs at the neighborhood level. And that will also allow Eve and I and Elizabeth to be able to work together in creating not only a dialogue, but initiatives that benefit everybody, both our businesses as well as our residential neighborhood. This is an unusual model. It doesn't really exist anywhere else in the city. And it's also because the South End is different because we have our own assortment of neighborhood associations that makes this kind of an approach really, really helpful and useful for us. So with that being said, just as the model, Elizabeth,
no,
please.
Thank you, Steve. You're very articulate. I was so keen to hand over the presidency to Elizabeth. Anyway, now, Elizabeth, over to you.
No worries. Elizabeth, Elizabeth, you're still muted. We can't quite hear you. No, it's not coming through, Elizabeth. Eve, do you want to just
we'll just let Elizabeth get connected, but Elizabeth has served with us on the South End Community Board now for a couple of years. And is that Elizabeth on now?
I think, yes, there we go.
There we go.
All right.
There we go. I have a brand new laptop. I'm sorry about that. So yes, really, Steve, I'll be short. Because really everything that you and Eve discussed, what we're doing with SEBA is supporting those initiatives. And one of the first things that we've been able to accomplish is work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They're in the process of launching a My Local MA campaign, which is all focused on driving businesses locally. So everybody that lives in Massachusetts, spend your money in Massachusetts. So we've already gotten the South End on their website. What I do ask is that if anybody has any images and stuff, please send them over because we're really short on that imagery of the South End. But it's the first step into marketing and development specifically for the South End and its businesses. This will still be tied into doing economic development, being a resource for businesses and residents. But that's really the direction we're now going in. And Eve is going to have that ownership of relationship within the community and businesses. And then the rest of the board is going to focus on economic development, working with the city and state to try and get funding, and then sales and marketing really of the community. So that's about it. We got a lot, but like I said, 72 hours on the job so far, Steve, so.
Well, we're delighted to welcome you, Elizabeth, and we're looking forward to this partnership with the South End Business Alliance. We think it will ultimately be a really good thing for the entire South End community. So thank you all very much for your tremendous cooperation. And so, Chris Breen, are you here? Chris Breen?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Ah, there you are. Okay, Chris Breen. Just wanted to introduce. I'll let you sort of carry the water on this, Chris. But just so the South End community understands, urban renewal is a subject that has been discussed within the South End community for a very long time. There are lots of very strongly held opinions about urban renewal. Its positives, its negatives, its opportunities, all of that. And for those of you who would like to have an opportunity to discuss it further, Chris Breen is the BPDA's resident expert on the issue. He's the project manager managing the urban renewal portfolio for the BPDA. And he wants to just mention the fact that he's going to be opening himself up to positives, negatives, and all kinds of comments a little bit later in this week. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, so I have a community meeting scheduled Thursday, October 8th at 6 o'clock. Some of you may know about it. I've gotten a number of emails already. So basically, I'm sort of tasked with this small sort of task to go up to each individual urban renewal community. There's 16 of them in Boston. We've done about 14 of them so far. The next on our list is the South End. And basically, my goal, it's not going to be finished in one meeting. It's probably going to be a series of meetings. But ultimately, I just want to introduce myself to you, the community. I'm pretty passionate about urban renewal. My entire life has been affected by urban renewal. My grandparents and my parents were both displaced from their house in Charlestown. They maintained in the area because they had a displacement officer that helped them acquire a property that wasn't being sold, and they were able to apply from a FHA loan that was given to them via urban renewal. But essentially, my whole life was built around urban renewal, living in Charlestown. Everything from the fire department that came to my house, to the train station I used to get to high school, to the park that I sat on for my entire life. So I'm very passionate about urban renewal. I know people have a lot of different feelings about it, but I'm here to listen, and each individual story is important. When we go out on this first meeting, it's going to be a lot of backstory, a lot of back history, to sort of give everyone a base level of knowledge of what is urban renewal. I start way back in 1937 with the American Housing Act, and we sort of look from a top down what was going on at the country at the time, and sort of what sort of spurred those policies, those taking policies, and the federal funds that were placed initially in housing authorities to sort of house low-income residents. Then we move into the 1940s with the American Housing Act in 1949, which sort of gives rise to this urban renewal as a social, as a government policy that fills hundreds of millions of dollars into major cities that were really suffering at the time, post World War II, from a lot of residents that had moved over from Europe and down below from African Americans escaping Jim Crow, and there were thousands and millions of residents in major cities that had no place to work, and there was no funding for cities. So essentially, urban renewal steps in and sort of starts a program to sort of reinvent those sort of cities. And initially, you see a lot of top-down, sort of aggressive, sort of overreach from governments. And then later in the 1960s here in Boston, you see a different type of urban renewal. Ed Logue takes over and he starts talking about planning with people. And a lot of those parcels and projects that I go out with are 1960s era urban renewal areas that are up for renewal in 2022. And a lot of them are good stories, essentially. I mean, I'm talking about affordable housing. I'm talking about Castle Square. I'm talking about the New England Aquarium downtown waterfront. I'm talking about the rehabilitation of Faneuil Hall. I'm talking about the Charlestown Public Library. I'm talking about Madison Park over in Madison Park. And I'm talking about the future as well, because there's still a lot of parcels. There's over 50 parcels here in the South End that the BPDA still owns and still needs those urban renewal tools and powers to sort of meet community needs and goals. In Washington Park, we have the Harris-Off and they call them the H-block parcels that we could put out for affordable housing. So there's still a lot that's been done. There's a lot going on now, and there's a lot we could still do in the future using these urban renewal tools. And this initial meeting is just sort of discuss the background of urban renewal, sort of what the tools are at our display as a community, as an agency, and as elected officials, and how we can best use those tools to sort of help out the communities that are in need still. And then essentially we'll go through all of that stuff. We have the land disposition agreement. I'll be able to show you where to access these land disposition agreements. There are over 400 urban renewal parcels here in the South End. And we've placed all of them on the BPDA zoning viewer. We've placed all of those LDA agreements on the zoning viewer, so anyone can access them and sort of be able to click and read and figure out what that urban renewal restriction is on that particular parcel. And that really gives the community a lot of power because now you have leverage. You have leverage against the BPDA, you have leverage against elected officials, and you have leverage against developers or redevelopers because you know what those land restrictions are in your area. Beyond that, we'll talk about BPDA owned property. We have over 51 parcels that we own in the South End. We really want to hear from you guys what and how to best use those parcels to sort of meet community goals. Whether that's open space, whether that's protecting, the environment, whether that's using them as sort of climate resiliency measures. Hopefully, we'll find that out starting Thursday. Beyond that, we'll talk about the importance of urban renewal and the tools to the agency. We'll talk about sort of next steps, like what is the agency thinking? What are you guys thinking in terms of boundaries? Should the boundaries change? Should it shrink? Where are these important land disposition agreements to the community? Which ones would they like to keep? Something like Boston City Lights that has a nonprofit on the first floor and residential above. That LDA, protects that first floor use to be nonprofit community space. Is that something that's important to the community? Is that something that we would like to maintain that LDA restriction via the urban renewal plan? So it's a large conversation, but it's one that's going to start Thursday, and it's going to last throughout the year in a series of meetings until we come to a culmination, a sort of an agreement with the elected officials, with the community and the agency itself on how to best move forward with urban renewal. And for each answer for each area is going to be different. Comparing South Station and the South End, those are two different entities with two different needs. Comparing Charlestown and the South End, a little similar in terms of what their needs are and what the protections are and what we want to keep and what we want to let go of. So this is the first step, and I hope you sort of take that journey with me, and I'm going to need a lot of assistance. I know a bunch of people have asked me to do community walks. I'm more than willing to do that. I've already done one with Carol, who's out there somewhere. And so with that, I guess I'll take any questions that you might have.
Chris, can you just tell us when the Zoom meeting is again?
Yeah, it's this Thursday. So it's today's Monday, so the 8th. So 3 days from now.
Okay. At what time?
It starts at 6. I have it going till 8:30. Okay. But this will be first.
We will publish the access information on our Facebook page. So anybody that wants the Zoom information, it'll be available on our Facebook page. Okay.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you. Thank you so much. Very, very much appreciate it. Just one follow-up question to Elizabeth Butel and Eve. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up.
Yep, still here.
Okay. A late coming question is, how many members are there of CEBA? And what's the relationship between CEBA and Washington Gateway Main Streets?
So the latest membership, because we had a little bit of a situation at the beginning of the year where we held off taking new membership just due to the situation of a lot of businesses and nonprofits not knowing the sort of how their businesses were going to survive. So we took a little bit of a break. It would be probably good to know at this moment, Randy Lathrop ran a sponsorship and a program where we managed to get some sponsorship from Suffolk Construction. And if Randy, I don't know if Randy Lathrop is on, but anyway, I can ask, what I can ask Carolyn to do is to send out a note of all the other sort of sponsorship and fundraising that we got, which was just excellent. So we're just starting up again now in terms of membership, and we can get that number out. And what was the second question, Steve?
Washington Gateway, separate entity.
Separate entity, and Elizabeth, I'll let you speak to this, but now Elizabeth is the new president. We're resetting everything. I'm sure that Elizabeth will be reaching out to Bud, who's the president. Is that right, Elizabeth?
I did. I left a message, a couple of messages for Andrew, so I'm looking to connect with him about doing some joint ventures and initiatives in the community. So once I connect with him, we'll do that. And at the next board meeting, we are also discussing expansion of membership, whether there is a grace period for new members that they wouldn't pay until the end of first quarter of 2021. because we already have a plan of marketing money that we're going to use to market the South End in general. And the conversation is really
Great.
about breaking that cash out into the different industries that we have within the community. So whether it's medical services, shoe, tailor, real estate, all of those kind of things.
Great, great. Elizabeth, Eve, thank you again. We're only running about 8 minutes behind schedule, to be honest with you, but I see that the mayor has joined us. I know that everyone's anxious. I won't offer much of an introduction except to say that that we in the South End are delighted to continue an annual tradition of welcoming Mayor Marty Walsh to the South End Forum every fall since he was first inaugurated. And every single time that he has come to the forum, it has always proved to be enlightening, informative, lively, interesting. And so we're delighted to have him join us again. And I'll let him introduce, I see a number of staff from the administration. So I won't bother to do that. I'll let you take care of that, Mayor. But Mayor Walsh, we're delighted to have you.
Thanks, Steve, and I appreciate that. Yeah, usually when I come to the meeting, it's always a very, it's a good topic, usually a good crowd. I think the last couple of years we've had to move from the library over to More Than Words, and now we're on Zoom, unfortunately. And I want to just thank you for being on here. I want to thank all the community for being on here. Thank you to the activists, the business leaders, the elected officials. I know there's a lot. I'll scroll through. I think there's 7 or 8 pages of people here. So thank you. I'm thinking about how life has changed. I have a computer going, an iPad going, and a cell phone all at the same time. Our life is completely gone now as far as the way we knew about it. I'll explain that in a minute. But on the phone, I think you heard from a few. Chris has done a nice job explaining that. Thank you, Chris. Chris used to be the liaison in Charlestown. We have Chris Osgood from Streets, Aisha Johnson from ISD, Ryan Woods from Parks, Greg Rooney from Transportation. I think Captain Sweeney might be on. I didn't see him, but I know somebody from D4 is on. Marty Martinez, Chief of Health and Human Services, who's led our efforts during the COVID time. Kim Tai, who is working on the areas around Mass and Cass, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Sheila Dillon from Housing, John Greeley from BPDA, Jen Tracy from our Officer Recovery Services, and I know there's other people on as well. Face is on. Thank you, Faisa, who's spending a lot of time with me lately. To all the South Enders that are on, thank you very much for being on here. I just want to begin with we're still in the battle of COVID, and I want to pass along my condolences to anyone who lost a loved one to COVID-19 this year. And I want to just let you know, anyone that's still battling this illness, we're thinking about you and praying for you. It's been a tough time here in our city and our country. This is a meeting that I honestly look forward to every year. I love coming out. I know that there's hard questions oftentimes, and I don't mind that. That if I didn't like hard questions, I wouldn't have run for mayor of Boston. I wouldn't have run for state representative before that. There's lots to discuss, so I'm trying to do my best to kind of go through the topics here so that we can get back and focus on the issues that are important to everyone here. A big priority for our community, I know, and for the city is the continuing efforts around Mass and Cass. I want to just make sure everyone understands that we will give this topic the time it deserves. My team's planning also another public meeting where residents can hear from the members of the task force directly as well. We'll talk about it tonight, obviously, but we can get into a deeper conversation about that as we move forward. I'll make sure that I'm on there. And I'll come back to Mass and Cass in a second. I want to start by COVID-19. I'm not going to go into the history because I think we all know the history of February, first case in Boston. By March 6th, we had 6 cases in Boston. By March, I think it was 13th or 14th, we were closing down schools and canceling parades and postponing the marathon. Ultimately got canceled. Shutting down industry, shutting down business, shutting down restaurants. Your work was shutting down. Our work was shutting down. And we saw the months of April, May, and June, high numbers here where we saw large surges, lots of sickness, lots of death, emergency rooms being at capacity. We built Boston Hope in 5 days over at the convention center to help us relieve capacity both in our hospital system, but also in our shelter system. Since that time, we have seen a steady decline in cases. However, in the last 2 weeks, we're seeing an increase in COVID activity. It's still far below what we saw in the spring, but it remains under the threshold for major concern, but yet it's still concerning, if that makes any sense to you. Last week, we moved into what the state categorizes the red category on their map, which is based on one metric out of several kinds of data that we're looking at. This is not unexpected for a city our size. Basically, what red means, 8 cases per 100,000 people. We averaged last week about 8.5 cases. But the map still helps us raise awareness and remind people to stay vigilant, and it's a useful tool for all of us. And the messaging that I've been giving, and many elected officials as well as some civic activists, was wear masks, wash hands, physical social distance, something that's really important. And that's what living with COVID is going to look like for the foreseeable future. And we also need to continue thinking about how do we move forward and recover while containing the spread of the virus and preventing outbreaks that turn into surges. We're continuing to make testing made widely available in more than 20 sites citywide. We have, I believe, two mobile vans that's going around. I'm asking people, one plea I have for you tonight, get tested. We need you to get tested. We want to get as many people tested as possible. You can get your health center, your primary care, or any of the sites that we have. In the South End, just so you have, the week ending September 28th, among the South End residents, there were 684 tests conducted. The testing rate in the South End is slightly higher than the citywide average. An overall positive test rate amongst South Enders who got tested was about 3.2%. You're still on the lower end I misspoke earlier, sorry, slightly on the lower end of the citywide average, but we still need you to get tested. There were 22 cases reported in the South End for that week. So the South End is seeing lower rates of positive tests per 100,000 than the average citywide, which is a good sign. I just want to thank all the residents, the business owners, and the essential workers who are doing their part in moving forward. The next piece that we're concerned about is schools. Last week, the Boston Public Schools started in a hybrid model, and we did in-person learning for the highest need students. So those of you that are parents that have students in the school, I hope that you've seen a lot of changes in the schools. Those of you that chose to continue a hybrid model, I'm hearing good reports from what we're doing in the schools right now. We have 125 public schools in Boston. We're prepared, every single one, for spacing inside the school, ventilation, dividers, cleaning, and safety protocols, both in the schools and on the buses. And we're also plenty of PPE for those schools. But obviously, as we see these numbers uptick, we're concerned about it. Remote learning, from what we understand, at least by the numbers, is working better than the spring. We're seeing an online attendance of about 90%. That's about equal to the beginning of school when people are in school. Teachers and school leaders and families, quite honestly, and students are doing an incredible job. We've provided over 40,000 free laptops and thousands of free internet hotspots, and that work continues. As laptops break or as Chromebooks break, we replace those Chromebooks, and we're working with the internet providers to make sure there are certain parts in our city that quite honestly have very bad, spotty internet connections. So we're working to improve that. Food, Boston is a universal food, breakfast, and lunch district. We're providing 2 free meals per day at over 70 grab-and-go sites across the city. And also with students, students that left school on Friday got 5 days of lunch and dinner and breakfast and lunch, I should say, to move forward. So if they miss that, they can go to the grab-and-go locations. During COVID, we've provided 3.5 million meals. When I say that, that's for schools kids, 2 million for kids schools, 1 million for seniors, 1.5 million for seniors and veterans and low-income families. So you really think about the need in our city, that there is a big need in our city. And what we're talking about now is what's the next step. Phase 3 of school goes into effect in about 10 days. And we're looking at the numbers very closely to see if we can proceed with the next phase. We won't know until the next couple of days until we get new numbers. Our small businesses, I won't go too much into this, but the small businesses on there, you can reach out to our economic development office. We have had relief funds, $7 million in debt-free relief grants to 1,850 businesses. 105 businesses in the South End received about $392,000 total. The reopening fund, we created that fund when we started to reopen, and we noticed that businesses didn't have money for PPE or the dividers. We put a fund up. We've distributed about $2.7 million in that fund, debt-free, to about 1,325 small businesses. 82 South End businesses took advantage of that program. The city's approved 550 restaurants for outdoor dining. About 50 of those are in the South End. The city is also, with the outdoor dining and the restaurants, have helped remove fees for propane heaters from the fire department. We're now also offering additional $1,000 grant for restaurants to purchase outdoor dining materials for the winter heater, like heaters. And also, we did not, 2 weeks ago when the governor increased the 10 people at a table, we didn't increase that because we saw an uptick in our numbers. So we stayed at 6 people right now. We're going to revisit it at some point, but right now we felt it wasn't right to move forward. The Resiliency Fund, the Boston Resiliency Fund, we raised $33 million from 6,700 individual people, companies, and foundations. This money came in extremely helpful. We've distributed $27 million to 350 organizations, mainly about food, clothing, caring for the vulnerable, technology for our students. That's where most of this money's gone. 46% of the resiliency grants have gone to nonprofits that serve neighborhoods, including the South End. Some of the organizations in your area that got it was the South End Community Health Center, which could expand testing, the Haley House Food Pantry, providing food to homeless families, the United South End Settlement Program for like food programs and pantries, St. Stephen's Youth Program, the Rise Foundation, focusing on tackling the opioid crisis, Project Place, Salvation Army, More Than Words, obviously got some great money because they have a lot of kids that they're supporting and families are supporting, and Rosie's Place. So anyone who donated to the Resiliency Fund, thank you very much for what you've done there. On housing issues, just COVID-19 has, I'm almost done with this and then I'll take into questions. COVID-19 has shined a light on some of our society's biggest challenges. Housing is obviously one of them. Right now, we're focused on keeping people in their homes and preventing evictions and ensuring everyone has a safe place to be. At the same time, we're working to continue the long-term impacts of housing affordability, housing accessibility, housing security. We've been focused on this for a long time. Since the pandemic has begun, we've used every tool at our disposal to keep people in their homes, direct rental relief, eviction moratoriums, and working with lenders on prevention foreclosures. We're working on construction of new affordable units that's restarted all across the city. We currently have 1,000 units of affordable housing in construction all across the city, and thousands more approved or proposed. So that's a good thing. We're seeing that happen. In order to decrease the demand on our homeless shelters, we're building more supportive housing for homeless individuals and families. We've placed roughly, during the pandemic since February, we've placed roughly 250 individuals into permanent housing this year. We've done 2,000 from 2015 through now, and that's 2,250 roughly of homeless individuals that were on the streets. We're hopefully going to break ground soon in Jamaica Plain of 250 units, and then also in downtown Boston, another program there. The Shattuck campus, we have resumed our conversations with the state about the future of the Shattuck. We've been given assurances that the RFP for housing on that site will be released in the spring at the latest. So that's something that's going to help us. And we also are working right now, we're focused on eviction moratorium. The state's eviction moratorium ends on the 17th of October. The city, we've expanded our eviction moratorium to the end of the year on our Boston Public Housing Authority. We have a piece of legislation at the State House that would give people, tenants, the right to counsel. What I'm concerned about, we don't have a number right now. I know Vanessa's on here. I don't know if Vanessa has a number, but we're looking at making sure that people, when they go in front of a judge, that they have the ability to have representation there. That will add further confusion and concern to our crisis. We also are working to get information out to tenants and to landlords for what the programs are available that we have in the city and what the state has at the state. And I can dive into that more later. This has been a brutal time for the city with COVID. As you know, back in February and March, when we were in the throes of the battle with COVID, we had to do a couple of things. Number one is we had to take our homeless population, and we literally got sites around the city of Boston so that they could have places to live safely. They could quarantine if they need to, that we could treat them if they had COVID. And we worked with Healthcare for the Homeless and Pine Street and a bunch of other programs. And we were able to spread around the city our homeless population to keep them safe. The addiction issue, the substance use disorder issue didn't go away. Many programs around the Commonwealth either stopped their programs or they cut their programs severely back. Throughout the entire COVID process, we continued our programs moving forward. We continued our program to make sure that people battling substance use disorder, mental health, and homelessness have a place to go, but it's also been a very difficult year for them. Many people, as you know, obviously more than most people know, many people throughout our region rely on the city of Boston for the recovery programs. And that's why we kept open the whole time. We're going to continue to investing in powerful long-term solutions. One of those is the Shattuck Hospital campus in JP and Long Island Recovery Campus in Boston Harbor. Every day we're communicating across city departments to adapt or adjust to respond to the opioid crisis and quality of life. During the pandemic, we added comfort stations where people had access to bathrooms because many of those access points were gone. Hand washing. We were having the doctors and nurses go out and recovery coaches go out and talk to folks that are out sick and suffering. We scheduled regular, and we still do, DPW and BPD street outreach workers are working out in Melanie and Mass. We're working to add more lighting. The task force has been working to increase their frequency in meetings, something that's really important. Long Island campus, we're focused on a long-term systemic solution out there. Our commitment to building a comprehensive recovery campus is still there. We haven't wavered one bit. What's astonishing to me is that the city of Quincy continues to fight us. Even though we made commitments to Quincy that we will not develop on the island, we wanted to be able to put 500 beds out there so that we can have detox entry points, halfway houses, programs for job training and things like that. So people, as they drive over the bridge to the island, their lives are in shambles and ruins. And when they drive off the island, you're hoping that their life is to a new life. And we're going to continue to push that. We've continue to move forward in our planning on the island as well while we've been going through this. Couple last things. One of the things, this is probably the most challenging year Boston has faced. It emphasizes how important and powerful it is for the long-term investments in community health and well-being. We've been laying the groundwork for this crisis for years, and unbeknownst to us that we were going to be in this crisis. We've used responsible budgeting in the city. We've earned a AAA bond rating 7 consecutive years. That puts us in a position to work through this storm while continuing to support city and invest in our neighborhoods. An analysis report in the New York Times about a month ago in August found that Boston is better prepared to handle the current economic crisis than any other city in America. We came out #1, and that's a testament to a lot of the work that all of you done and the work that we're working here in the city so hard to do. Lastly, continue to make capital investments just so you get them in the South End. $500,000 to begin the process of a fully renovated South End library. $2 million into improvements at Titus Sparrow Park. $920,000 Ramsey Park ball field. $116,000 for court renovations at Peter Park. $500,000 for address the drainage issues at Peters Park Little League Field. Schools, a $5 million upgrade to the Blackstone. That doesn't include the money that's been put in to open up for COVID. $1.6 million to begin the process to replace the Carter School in partnership with the Mass Building Authority. We're going to be building a new Carter School. Implementations of a new fresh food program at the McKinley in the South End, in the Blackstone, in the Hurley. $5.5 million for Woods Mullen upgrade so that the women that are homeless can live with dignity. $5.1 million for roof replacement at the Miranda Kramer in the South End Fitness Center building. $3 million for planning for a new Engine 3 station. There's a lot, and I try to go through that quickly. I just want to go back to Mass and Cass for a minute. I know for all of you on this call that live in the South End, it's been a challenging time. I am not going to kid you and try to sugarcoat what's happening. Addiction is something that an individual, in some cases, can't help until they're willing to go into treatment. I am not going to turn my back, and I have not turned my back on the folks at Mass and Cass. I'm not going to point fingers and say it's this fault or that fault or some other's fault. We have work to do out there. There's no question about it. In the last week, I think that we've seen some improvements out there, and we're going to continue to make the investments and continue to make the, when I say the investments, the human investment in working to help people get through the situation. I can't sugarcoat it because it's not a sugarcoating issue. Anyone that has an alcoholic or an addict in your family, you know what it's like. You love them, you hug them, you want to try and help them, you try to get them into program, they don't go, you do everything you can. This has been a perfect storm. We have the courts closed, so it's hard for us to section people to get them the treatment they need. We have programs closed, and we can't get them into programs. Their refusal to go into programs. And also, quite honestly, we're one of the only entities in the Commonwealth that is full servicing folks like this. Other places, people end up on our streets. Anyone that's been out in the street talking to folks, or if you do a walk there, or you do a homeless walk when it's the wintertime, oftentimes I ask the question, where are you from? And a lot of those times when I ask that question, the answer is not Boston, it's somewhere else. So I have talked to the state, and I'm trying to work with other elected officials that they have to help us here and provide programming in their areas. I am not one to put a person back on a bus and drop them off in their neighborhood. That New York's done that, other places have done that. We haven't done that in Boston. But I am asking other entities to help us out here in providing opportunities for programs around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It can't all fall on Boston. It's not sustainable. And the last thing I'll say, then I'm going to stop and turn it back over to Steve, is that I know these are challenging times. And I just want us to recognize that February, no one ever expected us to be shutting everything down. March was shutting everything down. We're working through COVID. We're trying to cope and live with COVID. And on top of that, we had the murder of George Floyd. And then we had systemic racism come front and center again in America. And it hasn't been fully addressed in America. And that's another issue that we're working through and looking at what has COVID taught us and how we move forward here. And now we have a national presidential election, which is adding a whole new complexity of stress and anxiety to a lot of people. So I just ask you, as we move forward here, we're going to be living with COVID probably through the spring in some shape, form, or fashion. It's not going to be an easy solution, but we are going to get through this. With that, thank you, South End, and I'm going to turn it back to Steve for questions.
Mayor, let me. There have been a bunch of questions that have come through the chat, so I'm just going to start with a couple of ones from your earlier talk, which was a question about outdoor dining, and then we can move from that to mass and cast questions. Are you willing to entertain making outdoor dining a permanent fixture for our restaurants, like New York has recently done?
Yeah, we're having a conversation now. I don't want to break news right now, so I'm not going to, if I announce it right now, my licensing board will probably come at me, but a couple things that I think have been really great in addition because of COVID. Number one is I think the fact that we have outdoor dining and it's really added a whole new complexity to neighborhoods like, maybe not the South End because you had some outdoor dining, but like Dorchester Avenue that I never thought you'd have outdoor dining on Dot Ave. That's where I'm from. And it really does add a whole new different flair to the community. So I love the idea. We expanded it to December 1st because we need to help our restaurants, and it's something that I would hope to pick right up in the spring again, and then make a conversation about how we make it permanent down the road. I also think that with COVID, I was on a call earlier in downtown, and I was getting a little bit of grief. Chris Osgood and myself, for bike lanes and bus lanes, but there's an opportunity now during COVID to really think about bus and bike lanes to have better connectivity in our city, as well as bus lanes prove that they cut down on traffic and they prove that people move quicker. It happened in Washington Street and it can happen all over the city. So those are two or three things that we can do, I think, that can help us moving forward.
Okay, I think there's a lot of questions that have come over the chat regarding mass and cast. So I'm going to try to summarize some of that in a bunch of different threads, if you'll allow me to use that term. The first is that some people have said that the Long Island Bridge closed in 2014, and that's 6 years from today. And we haven't made any progress really in terms of being able to move forward in being able to access that property on Long Island. A lot of people are asking a couple of important questions. Where is the state in all of this? This is a Quincy, Boston dispute. Why is the state, why is the governor not mediating this dispute between two cities? And particularly given the fact that this is an emergency situation with people who are in great dire need on the Mass and Cass streets, can we find a way to get the city to break the logjam between Boston and Quincy rather than us spending a lot of time in court? And how can we make Long Island, the recovery campus, something in development versus something that is just aspirational?
Thank you. Let me try and address that a couple ways. And anybody on the team, if I misspeak, jump in, Marty. So I would say that we've made some progress on the plans on Long Island as far as coming up with a comprehensive plan for what's going to be on the island. We have some consultants that have expressed and laid out what the island's going to look like. So when we originally talked about it, we talked about a recovery campus on the island. We didn't have concrete plans on what that would look like. We have those today. So we'll present that at the next meeting. When it comes to the state, the Department of Secretary of Environmental Affairs has approved what we've wanted all along the way. Quincy is appealing their decision, and Quincy is appealing our decision. So unfortunately, right now, the city of Quincy, the elected officials in Quincy, are refusing to have conversations, concrete conversations with us to move the island forward, move the bridge forward. I've reached out. I've told the councilor in Quincy and the mayor in Quincy in a public forum, more than one public forum, that their concern is that we were going to develop the island into luxury living or what have you. And I've made it perfectly clear that any agreement that we cut, we will give Quincy the authority that other than a recovery campus, anything that goes on the island would need to get approval from this Quincy City Council, signed by the mayor. They didn't take me up on the offer. So unfortunately, right now, we have two cases in court. Chris Osgood, you on here? Can you explain where we are with the two cases?
Sure. So as the mayor said, one of those cases is Quincy's appeal of the state's MEPA certificate. And that we don't expect to be resolved by the end of this year, but we are looking for that in 2021. The other court case we actually expect resolution on in the weeks ahead, and that is an appeal of the local wetlands ordinance from Quincy. Both those are in Suffolk Superior Court. So we have been making progress. I would also note, with great credit to tons of you on this call who submitted letters on the Chapter 91 license. We're also expecting to hear that from the state. And to the broader question of where the state is on this, as the mayor referenced, where the state has weighed in, where the regulatory body has weighed in, they have been in support of the plan for Long Island Bridge, because the plan for Long Island Bridge is one which is taking great care and concern for the environment. I'd also just note that the bridge itself, with credit to the mayor, at this point is fully funded and has been fully designed. So this last piece, really the permitting piece, is the piece that we're working through.
Let me just add two quick things, Steve. Number one is, as we're planning out the island, as we're building the bridge, we'll also be building the infrastructure on the island and building the island. So we're going to be doing it simultaneously at the same time, so that it's not going to be the bridge is going to be built and then we're building the island. We're going to be doing them at the same time. And the second thing I'll say, which people might find this hard to believe, I don't think the situation at Mass and Cass was created because the island shut down. I think the issue there is deeper than that. The issue that caused that, one of the main reasons for Mass and Cass and what we're seeing out there with the destruction of so many lives is the opioid crisis. And the folks that we see, since we've closed the bridge, we've housed 2,200 homeless people, individuals. I think Mass and Cass, or somewhere in Boston, we would still have had that, because the opioid crisis has just gotten worse as a crisis. When I got elected in 2014, that's when we started to see a lot of the heroin come into our city, and now we're seeing crystal meth come into the city. Crystal meth was always kind of a west of the Mississippi drug. We're seeing that here in the city of Boston now, and I think that I don't think the closing of the bridge actually added to Mass and Cass. I think what's happened is the crisis and not having enough programming in this country for people to access, in Massachusetts, but the country, for people to access to get treatment. That's my own personal feeling. You might disagree with me, but I think we could, because those folks, they're not going into our shelter now. They're not accessing our programs now in a lot of ways. I mean, we have programs for people. and they're not even accessing them now. Many of those folks aren't going into Woods Mullen. Many of those folks aren't going into Southampton Street. Many of those folks aren't accessing Rosie's Place, Father Bill, St. Francis House, and Father Bill's in Quincy, or Pine Street. They're not accessing those programs. Doesn't mean we don't have a little bit of both between homelessness and substance use disorder, but I clearly think that there's issues there.
Mayor, I think that there's a growing concern within the South End community that what we are seeing, largely as a result of the pandemic overlay at Mass and Cass, which has made things much, much worse than ever before, is that there's a feeling of decreasing safety than we've ever seen before. And while we understand that Long Island is in the works and is a plan, we all know that even if we were able to negotiate with Quincy tomorrow, getting the permits that are necessary and doing the building of the bridge is a couple of years off at best. So the question that a lot of South Enders have asked is, what can we do other than just depend on Long Island? Can we find a vehicle, whether it be looking at BPDA parcels, whether it be looking at the Shattuck Hospital campus and accelerating the process by which temporary or permanent supportive housing becomes available? How can we build more housing capacity for homeless who need continued treatment intervention or supportive housing that will address the question that people are facing today in the South End?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that one of the programs we're partnering with, we raised $10 million for Boston's Way Home Fund a few years ago. We're working with Pine Street on building housing, supportive housing in Jamaica Plain, and that's being sued and stopped. Trying to get the Shattuck piece out is another one. I think that the more housing we can build with wraparound supports makes a big difference. We've been able to, house over these last 5 years, 2,200 people. That means they're not on the streets anymore. We need to continue to increase the housing availability for homeless individuals. I don't know, Sheila, if you can jump in for a minute and talk about some of the other programs we're working on. But let me just say this to you, like these housing units need to be created now, because Pine Street, I know it's controversial, they might be on the call, but Pine Street used the roundhouse for people ready to jump into housing. So it's kind of almost like a transition program. Pine Street had that, we had that, we did these things called housing surges. We've been able to put people in Boston Housing Authority, different places. That's what we have to start to think about, having people go to step down and then move on to housing. The problem is that we probably need about 1,000 units of housing right now. And if that would happen, we have the job training programs, we have the recovery programs, we would see a difference immediately in the street. Even when Long Island's built, we gotta create more housing. But let me have Sheila address specifically a little bit about the homeless housing with wraparound supports.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. And you mentioned some of the projects, but we have been building a lot of affordable housing, but it's become very clear, and certainly you're all feeling it, that we need a lot more supportive housing. So we have a pipeline right now of about 600 units, mostly for homeless individuals. We're also focused on housing for homeless families. The mayor mentioned some of them. Washington Street, I'm really hopeful that will start this fall, and that's 150 units, over 200 units, but 150 dedicated for homeless individuals that need services. We've got LaGrange downtown with St. Francis House. We're bringing on a couple of others immediately downtown. And then Shattuck, a lot of you have been wonderful, putting some friendly pressure on the state to move that. And that could be a couple of 100 units out there. And they've promised the mayor they'll move that early spring. So I think, our goal is just to have a very robust pipeline and then move that pipeline as fast as we can. And we do, we're working on it every day. Just want to mention one thing, and the mayor did touch on it. Part of it is building housing with supportive services. We've also been working with the Boston Public Health Commission in housing a lot of homeless in affordable housing and BHA housing. And since May, we've housed over 200 homeless individuals, and we have another resources for another 135. So that's 300 since May. So we are housing a lot of homeless individuals right now. And hopefully that's going to make a difference, especially as, the shelters have reduced capacity.
Mayor, just back on that same thread, a couple of people have talked about the safety aspect of what we're looking at, as well as the hygiene piece. Never before in the history have we seen so many hygiene issues in the South End. And I know we're tackling some of those complex issues within the task force, but people in the South End are asking, how can we ask the city to help us to eliminate all of the human waste that we're finding on private property throughout the entire South End? It's become epidemic proportions, and we understand that, that if it's a public a location, certainly Public Works or Parks Department will take care of it. But we're facing the same kind of thing on private property, and people are asking, how can we declare the South End a special zone because no other part of the city is experiencing this the way we are?
Yeah, let me just on your very last point. Unfortunately, I'm hearing it in other parts of the city as well. Not anywhere near the magnitude that you're dealing with it. But it's the fact that when we closed libraries down and all these places got shut down, people didn't have places to use the bathrooms. That became a big issue. I don't have the answer at this second for you right now on that, but what I want to do, I know that we hired Kim, I think Kim Ty's on the phone. I know we hired a company to go up and pick up waste. And I want to talk to her about, can we ask them to go on private property as well to assist in the communities that's there, if we can. I don't have an answer for you this second right now, but I will have that answer for you tomorrow and see how we do that. How do we pay? Because ultimately, you're the payer, you're the taxpayer, you're paying for the bill, and seeing if we can use that as an opportunity to increase, not just picking up on city streets, because Public Works did pick up. And there was obviously some concern there of the workers. And so we hired a company. So I'll have an answer for you tomorrow on that one, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. The other part of this, the second piece of this, is that we'd really like to see a 311 app that allows residents to be able to report this stuff easily rather than putting it in, a category that's, that isn't really understood by everybody easily. Yep. So we've been asking for kind of like a 311 app that will allow us to address this.
Yeah, let me do this. Let me have a conversation and face everyone's on here. Maybe what we should do is look at two areas, one at the 311 app and look at the trash app to see if we can put a special category on that so that, people can complain if they want to put complaints in about trash. I know that had been an issue. Mike Burrell takes that very seriously and his team, but is there something we can put in a special place that the South Enders can have that they can quickly access, and we monitor it literally on an hourly basis?
Mayor, on the public safety side of this, as I said, there are a lot of comments that we're seeing in the chat saying that people are not feeling safe. And a lot of that has to do with what some of the experts tell us is the introduction of meth to the current drug cocktails that people are taking. And so we're seeing much more dangerous behavioral issues at Mass and Cass. We used to have in D4, as you're well aware, a bicycle patrol unit that was capable of managing the residential community and being in the alleyways. And as a result of the overtime issues, we kind of lost the ability of D4 to kind of fill in that gap and help the residential community. That was replaced by the citywide unit, but it hasn't really helped us to address the overall public safety dimensions that we're seeing in terms of the Mass and Cass impact on the South End. Do you feel, and do because most of the people in the South End really are very concerned, do you feel like we need to have a different kind of deployment strategy going forward, both in terms of Mass and Cass, as well as the impact on the abutting neighborhoods of Lower Roxbury, the South End, and Newmarket?
Let me let me just say this. I think that there is, to some degree, a different deployment with Deputy Stratton and his team. I think what we have to do there is look how do we add supports to them, not just policing supports, but some of our outreach supports. I think we've seen some of that in the last couple of weeks where our outreach teams are working closer with them. On the south end and B3 and C6, I think it is in Southie on that end. There's been some coordination and consolidation of different units in those areas. I know there's a citywide bike unit. I think they've spent most of their time in the Mass and Cass area, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I'll find that out, but I've been told. I want to back up a little bit. When we did the city budget, we diverted $12 million from overtime into programs. We did it into the best team. We did it into some counselors. We did it into a bunch of different areas. That does not mean that we cut back in the neighborhoods. And you and I, Steve, talked very early on where there was concern. That has not happened. Okay, I want to be very clear on that. And if it has happened, I want to know about it. Throw it in the chat, because that has not happened. And what we're doing is we're working with D4. I see Peter's on. I work with D4 and B3 and C11. I mean C6 to make sure that they cover the neighborhoods, while the deputy and his crew can cover the Mass and Cass area. If anyone's giving you that excuse that it's cut back because of overtime cuts, that's just simply not true. And I want to be perfectly clear on this, because when I heard that, I was pretty pissed off about it, to be honest with you. And anyone who says that to anyone in the neighborhood, south of the neighborhood, well, just ask them how much overtime has anyone lost, because there's been no overtime loss that I'm aware of. What we're doing is we are taking some specialty units to add increased capacity in the districts, because that's what we need to do right now, is put people into the districts, because of the need is a lot different because of COVID. So when we talk about that, I think that's a good topic to bring up at the task force, to ask, because there's uniqueness. The B3 side and the D4 side, a little different, because you're talking about quality of life issues. You're talking about people walking through the neighborhoods. They're walking to or from the Mass and Cass area, or they're walking through the Mass and Cass area. And I think that that's a conversation that we'll have at the next task force, to ask, is the allocation of services the right allocation of services, and how do we make sure we don't happen? I don't know what happened in the last 6 months other than COVID-19. But I know 6 months ago when we put out MassCast 2.0, and I know there's criticism about our plan, and that's fine, I don't mind that. But 2.0, we were working towards a solution, and we were making some real good gains there. And then we have the world we're in today, and everything kind of got pushed backwards. And what we're doing now is trying to reclaim the momentum that we had 6 months ago in that neighborhood, and addressing the issues on the street. And I'm going to do everything I can, and we're going to do, I can't tell you the amount of calls I've had. Kim Ty has been in my office 7 times, I think, in the last 3 weeks. Marty Martinez has been on the phone with me. Face has been on the phone with me. I've been talking to everyone, and quite honestly, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. And when people drive through there, all my friends and everyone I know who drives through there, they send me a text. Okay, I get a text every time a family member drives through there and saying, what's going on here? In the last couple of days, I've gotten 2 texts that says, wow, it seems a little better out here. I don't know what the reasoning is. Who knows? I'm hoping it's good stuff. But again, on the police effort, I think that we need to have a smaller group conversation. Bring it back. It's not a secret meeting. We'll bring it back to everyone here on the call to let you know.
And Mayor, just to reiterate what you said in the beginning of your comments, we are in fact going to have a follow-up meeting with the task force and with the CRT group that is going to be open to the community, so that we can continue to discuss these matters. Is that we've got that correct, right?
No, absolutely. And I just want to say, and I shouldn't say this, so I'm gonna get myself in trouble right now. Captain Facey, if you're on, you do an incredible job. Captain Boyle, if you're on, you do an incredible job. I have to say this, and Captain Sweeney reminds me of an old school captain that has numbers of constituents in his phone. He's not afraid to address issues, and I want to thank him for that. He told me he's on the phone, so I want him to hear this, because he does. This is like his home, his second home, and he does treat the South End like that. And I'll be honest with you, there's some great captains in the city. You'd be hard pressed to find a captain in a lot of ways better than Cap Sweeney.
I think that most people who have had any dealings with Captain Sweeney would agree. He takes it personally. One of the other questions that people have raised is, are we doing enough in terms of actually managing the amount of needles that we're seeing? We've talked about needle kiosks in the past. We know that they're controversial. We've talked about being able to actually have needles deposited at local pharmacies. We've been having these discussions for a very long time, and everybody agrees that the needle pickup crew is really, really good when you call them. But it's hard for them to stay on top of this, and there isn't a day that goes by that there aren't multiple pictures of needles on stairways and on top of mailboxes and everywhere. And it's become an issue that says that we're really not staying ahead of this. Are there any strategies that we can explore that have been working in other cities or other countries that might be worth investing in terms of getting a handle on the needles that we're seeing and the danger that poses?
Let me try and answer that in a couple different ways. I think as a society, we're not dealing with the issue of addiction the right way. That's number first of all, and that's too long to get into a conversation here. I think that when I talk to my colleagues around the country, actually, we're probably in a better situation than most cities, and that's not good. If we're saying we're in a better situation than other places, that's not a good situation to be in. I think that we've increased our folks up there picking up needles. I think obviously we're gonna have to look at how do we continue to do that. I just ask everyone, do not pick up needles yourself. I know that people have done that in the past, and do not collect them. Do not bring them to other locations. They're dangerous for you. We don't want you to stick yourself or have somebody, you be exposed to something. So again, those are things I think that the task force is battling with and looking at. The issue is, and I've said this before, to me, it's not about the needle, it's about the arm the needle goes into, and how do we reduce the amount of arms that the needle goes into, and that will reduce the number of needles in the street. I know that's not the answer you want, but I think that we're open to any idea. We've tried the kiosks, some of them work, some of them don't. We put one kiosk across from the school, and we got criticized for doing that, and that's where the needles were. So I think that we have to look at that more comprehensively and how we do it. I think that the fact is, how do we get the people from shooting up on somebody's stoop in front of their porch or in the back of their alley? How do we do that? That's what we have to do.
And Mayor, and I'll put this as the last question, and then just ask if there is anything that we want to take from the floor. But maybe 5 or 6 people have said that they believe that what the South End is facing right now is as a result of centralizing so many services in one geography, and that people feel frustrated that they are not seeing a decentralization strategy either coming from the task force or coming from operations or providers in the South End. And certainly Pine Street's use of the Roundhouse Suites was sort of a glaring example of the kind of thing that really sort of got people a little upset. Not from the perspective of what Pine Street provides and what they're trying to do, but the concept of centralization or decentralization. Folks are frustrated that they're not seeing tangible progress. Why are we not seeing other needle exchange programs in other parts of the city? Why are we not seeing low threshold engagement centers in other parts of the city? What can we do to move the ball forward on decentralization from Mass and Cass?
Well, I'm going to start with Councilor Sabi George has hopefully I think a resolution that would allow needle drop-offs at pharmacies. So that's a help, and I know that they've done it in the past, and I want to thank the councilor for her work on that. I think that we have to go beyond decentralization of programs in Boston to decentralization programs in the Commonwealth. I think that we have to, and as I started this, I'm not blaming anybody, but we need other cities and towns to step up here. If we went out right now and walked wherever it was, Boston Common, Mass and Cass, if we went into Woods Mullen, or if we went into Southampton Street, or even in the Roundtree at what Pine Street has, I'd be willing to bet that roughly 50% of the people that live in those areas that are homeless on our streets come from other areas. And again, I'm not saying that we necessarily have to send them back, but what we need to do is have those areas step up and have them create more programming out there for people. I think that that's something that I think is a problem. I've had that conversation with the state. Marty's had it with the state. I think Sheila might have had it with the state. And again, I'm not throwing them under the bus here. What I'm saying is they need to help us. You know, we've had some guests at Southampton Street that came out of prison, not county, prison. The Bill Ricker or not Bill Ricker, but Devens or Walpole, one of those places. They shouldn't be given a one-way ticket to Boston, quite honestly. And some of the folks that are looking for drugs or treatment, they're coming to Boston, which is fine if they want treatment. Long Island's going to be for everybody. But the issue is that we can't continue. We've done it for forever, Boston, long before I was the mayor. We've done this forever. We've been the place that provides the services. We've been the place that takes care of people. And right now, with this crisis in addiction, we need help. That's the bottom line, because they can't, you know, if any press on the phone, this is off the record. There's plenty of kids in Boston, down Mass and Cass right now from the city of Quincy. There's plenty of homeless people at Mass and Cass and around the city of Boston from Quincy. Can you imagine if I took a bus down there, threw them on the bus and brought them back to Quincy Center and dropped them off? So we don't want your people here. Can you imagine the inhumanity of that? I'm not doing that. It's the first time I've ever publicly said that. But it's about time that people help us and step up a little bit. We need the help. I don't mind getting criticism. I don't mind the criticism for Mass and Cass. I don't mind that, because we're doing our very best to make it better. And God, you, all of you have been tolerant, and thank you for that. But we need people to step up. And the last thing I'll say, you know, deeming Mass and Cass as Marty's Mile, that's fine. But when the press labeled it Methadone Mile, I just thought about that for a minute, how disrespectful that is, because they talk about Methadone Mile, and the reason why people are out there is because they're sick. And I'm not looking for sympathy here, because they're sick. So if the press wants to help us in this fight, instead of doing high profile stories and taking shots at needles, why don't they do something to help us understand the importance of getting people into treatment and asking other cities and towns to step up and help us? That's what they should be writing the stories on, not taking some poor kid that's bent over on the street, that's suffering, that was thrown out of his house because his family can't put up with that anymore. So I didn't mean to go on that tirade. Sorry.
No, actually, please, Mayor, continue.
No, I just want to, I don't know if that was the last question, but I just want everyone on this call to understand how much that I and the people of the city of Boston that work for the city care about you in the South End. We're going to continue this battle. I know you've put up with, I've had conversations personally with many of you. I've had, you know, conversations in your front porch, in the backyard. You don't really have porches, the front stoop, in the back alleys. We're going to continue to work hard out there to bring back. You put investment in your property. You're raising families in the neighborhood. You're sending your families to schools. Manny Lopes from the health center is on the phone. You know, we fought hard to make sure that the South End Health Center stayed open and moving forward. We're building new libraries. We're not doing that because we're not doing that because we just should do it. We're doing it because we care about the community. There's elected officials on this call that care about the community, and we have to do a better job, quite honestly. And I'll be the first to say it. We have to do a better job. I'm not looking for a pat in the back, but we have to do a better job. The one area that when I got into office in 1997, the one area that I fought the hardest for was recovery programs, because of my own personal experience and my family members, quite honestly, and people I know and friends of mine. I have friends of mine that are sober today. I have friends of mine that are dead today. I have friends of mine that are still active today. You know, so I understand it. I have family members that are still active today. Some are sober today. Some are dead today. So, you know, it's an awful, awful illness, and we have work to do. But I'll tell you this, I'm not going to politicize. I'm personally not going to politicize it. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the community, your community, the Roxbury community, in the Newmarket area get the supports and the things they need to not have to deal with this every single day like you've been doing, particularly for a long time, but in particular for the last 6 months, more than probably in recent history.
Mayor, we really, really appreciate opening this dialogue on MassandCast. We know that there are a lot of other questions that are out there, so we're looking forward to the follow-up meeting with the task force, where we can perhaps talk a little more specifically about some other concerns that have been raised. It looks like we're out of time at this point, so on behalf of the South End Forum, I really want to thank you. If you have any parting words, we're happy to have them. But I want to make sure that the message to the South End community is that this is the opening conversation about these issues that we face, and that we will continue the conversation through the next dialogue with the task force, correct?
Yeah, we will. And I got a lot of private messaging today from a lot of people. So what I would suggest you do, get in touch with FASA tomorrow, and then any questions you have, either I will try and get you back directly, or I will get answers for any questions. There's a lot of questions, and we will do our best to get everything answered. Any questions that Steve has that weren't answered tonight, get them. There's a ton of private messages, and I apologize. I wasn't able to multitask, talk and respond to you. So just get them to FASA, any questions you have, or get them to Steve, and we will get everything answered as best as possible for everyone in the next couple of days. And FASA, just come down and see me tomorrow anyway.
And this meeting has been recorded, and we will post it, making it available so that folks will have a chance to review it. And so, Mayor, I really want to thank you.
To all the outside agencies I offended, I guess I'm sorry. I guess nothing's on the record, so it's all public now.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
I wanted to acknowledge that Peter Messina and Sergeant, pardon me, that Captain Sweeney were also on the call. Two of our most important BPD resources that are helping to work the issue. So thanks so much to you guys.
And I'm jumping on another car.
Mayor,
now,
thanks.
So go Pat. The Patriots started, I don't know, an hour ago. I don't know what the score is. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all. Right. Take care now.